Hey folks, this is Kalani. They're actually going to do it, and by it I mean almost anything and everything that has been asked of the dev team for the last year or so. Covenant swapping? Check. Conduit energy completely deleted? Check. Legion time walking, PvP scaling, balance tuning, new customization? Check, check, check. This info dump has been crazy, so let's jump right in. Let's start by looking at the big blue post, because I still kinda can't believe this. In the next few days, we will be updating our PTR with a first look at patch 9.15, alongside feature updates like the new time walking experiences. This time we're visiting Legion with a couple of twists. These 0.5 patches, falling in between full content tiers, present an opportunity to focus on balance and revision of core systems based on feedback and data from the season so far. Patch 9.15 will include several significant changes to the Shadowlands Covenant systems in particular. Once you've reached a high renown threshold, you will thereafter be able to freely switch among any of the 4 covenants without cooldown or restriction, as well as use cosmetic rewards that you have earned from one covenant even if you are currently a member of a different one. Both the covenant switching and the use of cosmetic rewards will apply to alts once the renown threshold is reached on one character. Holy cow, there it is. The RIPCORD has been pulled, ladies and gentlemen. I guess there's going to be a renown requirement tied to it, but after you get to whatever renown level that is, you should be able to swap back and forth whenever you want, as often as you want, without any restriction. That means you can play Kyrian for Mythic Plus, Necrolord for PvP, Venthyr for raiding, and then Nightfae for open world content, all in the same day, or whatever combination you want. You can swap to Nightfae for one spec and back to Kyrian for another. You can collect every available appearance for every covenant, every mount, every toy and pet, and use them whenever you want. That part was quite explicit, so you can still rock your Necrolord gear even while using Venthyr abilities. This opens up the system so much, and it carries over for alts, so it won't be a separate renown grind to get your alts up to the point where they can freely swap. As soon as one character hits that renown level, any character you want to play will have that full freedom. This is huge for the game going forward, and I really have to wonder what the game would have been like if this freedom was there right from the start of the Shadowlands expansion. It doesn't stop there though. Conduit energy is being removed. Conduit will be freely swappable without restriction, and when playing alternate characters, if you have already completed a given Covenant campaign on a different character, you will be able to immediately earn the renown and third soulbind unlock without needing to replay the full narrative arc. So Conduit energy is being completely scrapped, finally. It never really added anything to the game and it was just ignored at best, so that's another awesome change. It also makes a lot of sense with the Covenant swaps being open too. It would be really stupid if you are still hindered by Conduit energy, even though you can swap your entire Covenant at will, so thumbs up there. It's worth pointing out that the blue post also includes reasoning for these changes. For the Conduit energy, they said the system hasn't played out the way they hoped it would, and they should have heeded community feedback and taken a different direction a year ago. So at least they're recognizing that the system just doesn't add anything right now, and there was a lot of feedback and pushback against the system when it was first suggested. Acknowledging mistakes is a good step forward, though it doesn't help long term if they don't keep that mindset going forward, especially into an expansion, so hopefully they keep listening to player feedback. And then alts have finally been given more of the new game plus treatment that we were expecting in Shadowlands. You shouldn't have to repeat time gates and progression locks again and again and again on multiple characters in my opinion, so being able to skip over Covenant campaigns you've already done is a massive change for alt friendliness. The blue post expands upon this a little bit actually, saying that this change comes from many ongoing discussions within the development team, focused on feedback that at times players feel that the content they most enjoy is locked behind other experiences, mainly experiences that were fun the first time through but start to lose their luster on repeat playthroughs on alts, especially when required for character progression. This tells me that we might see many more changes to alts and the way their progression works, and kind of like a paradigm shift of what an alt is supposed to be. If you only have to do certain things on one character, and that's already unlocked or progressed for an alt character, I could see many players picking up several alts because they can quickly get into the good stuff. When you have to keep multiple characters relevant through a multitude of systems and chores and weekly upkeep activities, People probably just won't play multiple characters, which is a huge missed opportunity for the game. If playing alts was easier, more people would play more alts, which helps keep the game more interesting and fresher for longer, so I would love to see more alt friendliness changes in the future. These are some of the bigger changes to expect in 9.15, but there was another blue post with a huge list of changes they're working on as well. For example, we will finally be able to skip over the more intro quests in patch 9.15, so we will never have to listen to Jaina explaining the jailer or any of that anymore. In the new patch, you can just skip over the entire thing and head straight to Oribos and continue on with a new alt experience. Speaking of which, there are going to be several other improvements to the alt leveling experience in patch 9.15. The current plans include an additional rank of heirloom upgrades, I'm assuming to allow them to scale up to level 60, but they could also add in some new or different functionality for heirlooms. There's going to be improvements for the Threads of Fate system, whatever that means, but the big thing here is adding in Torghast as a leveling option and starting the renown grind earlier. Torghast leveling could be an awesome alternative to dungeon spamming or speeding through the questline, so I'm very excited to see how that turns out. And to help players get caught up with the legendary effect acquisition, either on alt characters or maybe for players who haven't been keeping up with Shadowlands, the drop rate of all legendary rune carving powers will be increased to 100% if that drop is from a dungeon and for any difficulty. So collecting those dungeon drops will be much faster and more reliable going forward. We will also see the addition of Legion Time Walking, including access to Legion Mythic Plus dungeons. I honestly have no idea what that's going to look like and what that could do to the Mythic Plus gearing up system, but being able to run through some of these older dungeons is going to be a nice way to change things up, and if the Mythic Plus variation actually drops decent gear, it could be a fun alternative to gearing up at endgame. Hopefully they also include some Legion raids in the Time Walking event sometime soon, because some of those raids were actually awesome. When this event is first available, it will also last for 2 weeks, so plenty of time to see how it all works. We will also see talent and ability improvements coming. The dev team plans on updating some class talents and class abilities, including conduits, rune carving powers, and covenant class abilities, and honestly there is no time like patch 9.15 to get some of this stuff done. If we're able to swap covenants freely and change up our conduits almost on the fly, the dev team has less restrictions to take into account when balancing this stuff. It's not such a huge deal anymore to change things up because we as players won't have those heavy restrictions. So I'm hoping to see a lot of balance changes in 9.15, and it's always nice to see talents get a good balance pass too, just to make sure we don't have too many dead talents. This next one is something I wasn't expecting to see, but allied race unlocks are being lessened for a few different races. For the Kulturans, Mechanomes, and Dark Iron Dwarves, which have dungeon requirements to unlock them, those quest requirements are actually being more or less removed. You'll have an option to skip them instead, which will make unlocking those races in particular quite a bit faster and more streamlined. Another interesting change planned is to add in more travel points throughout the Moor, so I guess new flight paths and teleportation points. The two key locations mentioned were Perdition Hold and Desmotarian, so maybe a quick hop on over to the raid is in the works there as well. Moving around the Moor should make more activities a bit more bearable, which I'm all for. We'll also be able to unlock the ability to turn in anima without having to trek back to a Covenant Sanctum. The Archivist will have a new questline to unlock an anima diverter in Korthia to make depositing anima much more efficient and just simple. There's a big change coming for Transmog too. We'll be able to link a full Transmog outfit in chat or online, and the link will show every piece of gear used in a Transmog outfit and allow you to see where each of those items comes from. If you have those items already and if you can obtain them for your current class. So that's a lot of information right from a single link that anyone will be able to create. This is going to be a lot of fun and will make sharing transmog sets much easier and faster in general. PvP hasn't been left out of the fun this time. Lower item level PvP gear will now scale to a higher item level in PvP situations when compared to before. The item level boost is only for lower tier PvP gear though, so the higher end stuff will remain at the same power level. This will reduce the overall power difference between someone starting PvP and someone who's already decked out in all the best stuff. This will be an interesting one to keep an eye on because they've tried all sorts of tuning and balancing methods for PvP before, but obviously none of them stood the test of time because here we are trying something new. On the other side of the game, we have more changes coming for PvE content, specifically old PvE content. BFA content will now have legacy loot rules enabled for anyone who is level 60. If you're not too sure what legacy loot rules are, basically it's the opposite of personal loot. Right now, if you go back into a BFA dungeon, you are forced into personal loot, which means you only get one item maximum for a boss, and sometimes you get nothing at all. With the legacy loot rules in place, items will drop as if you had a full group back in the day, so it's a lot more loot in general, and especially more loot from raids. Usually we don't see legacy loot rules for a previous expansion for quite a while, so they're definitely speeding things up there a bit. This should make it much easier to collect transmog from every BFA raid and dungeon, which should give you even more to do during the next content lull. That's not the only old content on the menu in 9.15 though. Island Expeditions, god that phrase still makes my eyebrow twitch a little, but Island Expeditions are another type of BFA content that will get revitalized a little bit in patch 9.15. We will now be able to queue for islands solo or with a party, and we can queue into normal, heroic or mythic difficulties. Now you may ask yourself, why would anyone want to submit themselves to such horrors? Island Expeditions? By choice? Well, there are a whole boatload of cosmetic rewards tied to that system, including transmogs, pets, toys and mounts. The main problem with this content wasn't that it was actually hard to complete after BFA, it was that you literally couldn't do it without a group. You had to queue up and wait for other players before you were even allowed onto an island expedition, and as you can imagine, not many players are queuing up for this activity, which means crazy long queue times. That's a big problem when you consider just how many islands you have to do and how grindy that entire system is, even though you could feasibly clear an island expedition on your own at the end of BFA. That didn't matter because you couldn't get onto an island in the first place. But now with this change in 9.15, you'll be able to do it all by yourself, which unlocks all of those cosmetic rewards once again. So if you still need any island expedition mounts or anything else that comes from islands, 9.15 might be the perfect time to get that done. And of course we have new customization options coming for quite a few races. The main two that are getting more attention in 9.15 are the Lightforged Draenei and the Nightborne, and while the dev team before was only saying what they were looking at and planning, this time they're showing us what we can expect to see in 9.15. For the Lightforged Draenei we can see new hairstyles and colours, as well as new horn designs. Hopefully we'll see horn designs separated from hairstyles too. You can also see the tail length options with different jewellery designs, so if you wanted a super long tail with as much bling as you can fit onto it, that should be an option in 9.15. There are also new skin colours on top of everything else. I think there's a lot of potential with the Lightforged Draenei as a race, and some of these new options start to bring that out. Really ornate jewellery options, gold, gold and gold everywhere you look, and graceful horn and hairstyle options. The changes look great so far, so I'm excited to see what else they have in store. On the Nightborne side of things, we can see two awesome additions right away. The extra facial jewelry options, which will make your Nightborne feel way more Nightborne-y and less like a cheap Night Elf knockoff, and the option to have squinty eyes. This might seem like a small thing, but one of the main complaints about Nightborne customization when they were first implemented was the eyes. Most Nightborne in-game have narrower eyes, almost like they're constantly suspicious of illusions and what people might be trying to hide. When Nightborne were first implemented, the only eye option they had was wider eyes like Night Elves. It kind of ruined the look for a lot of players, especially when you look at a lot of the Nightborne NPCs that we've been interacting with for the vast majority of Legion, and we already had to accept a watered down version of those, but now we also didn't get the narrow eyes? Terrible, I tell you, terrible. But it looks like 9.15 is going to remedy that and give us the extra eye option. There should also be new hairstyles, hair colours, skin colours, and maybe even some new tattoo options to look forward to as well. You can see the second model here has some runes scrolled across her thighs. Hopefully that's intended. Different rune tattoos that are easier to see will be great for Nightborne customization. We also have a brief look at some of the new Voidelf options. You can see the sort of new ear size options on this slide, but seeing as Blood Elves already have them, and it's more or less the same thing, nothing too unexpected here. And then we have another slide with the hair colours. 3 shades of blonde, more or less, with a dark red and a light red. So these are the natural hair colour options that they were talking about last week, and I would expect them to be available for both male and female Void Elves. So if you want to, you really can go ahead and make a Blood Elf on the Alliance side. Oh, sorry, High Elf. We're supposed to call them High Elves, right? But that's everything that was covered in the blue posts, but there was also an infographic floating around with even more updates to look forward to. Most of this stuff is what we already talked about: Legion time walking, Covenant swapping, Conduit energy removal. But here's a new one: legendary item recycling. This could point towards us being able to tear down a legendary effect to get the Soul Ash or Soul Cinders back, so we can more easily create new legendaries and swap things around. We know about the customizations and Alt Covenant skip, but legacy raid tuning, that's new too. I guess this means we'll see older instances that are still very hard to clear solo get a bit of tuning to make them easier overall. A lot of Legion raids specifically come to mind. Then there's new toys, mounts and travel forms, talent and ability buffs, and the reporting improvements. So just a few extra things on the graphic when compared to what we talked about earlier. And just in case you were thinking we'd have to wait to see all of these changes and how they actually work in game, as we said earlier, the patch 915 PTR is slated to go live this very next week, so we should be able to get some hands-on experience with all of the 915 changes in just a few days, which is very exciting. So probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Keep your eyes peeled for a blue post. Now, with all this being said, and with all of these great changes coming our way, I am still worried about the future of Warcraft. When you look at this long list of changes, again, which I am very excited about, and they're all great changes in my opinion, it's going to be fantastic to have them in game, it's very frustrating to go down that list and think, you know, that really should have been in at launch. This is kind of what we were talking about before Shadowlands even launched. This should have been part of the Shadowlands expansion package, not an update that we waited a whole year to get. But that's been the pattern of World of Warcraft expansions for a while now. In Legion, we had quite a rocky start with random legendaries and the incredibly strict AP grind, but by the end of the expansion, we had a legendary vendor that pretty much solved all of those problems, and artifacts opened up considerably. The end of the expansion was great, but it took them until the end to fix a lot of the issues that were pointed out during Legion beta, and then everything was scrapped to start again in BFA. At the start of BFA, we had a rocky start, and that continued throughout the patch cycle, and honestly, at the end of the expansions, things turned out okay. We had a corruption vendor, we could target essences, alt catch-up was significantly better, Azerite gear was in a better place, it started to feel like a complete experience. And then everything was scrapped, and we started again with Shadowlands, which has since followed that exact timeline. The only difference is that the major issues are being addressed in a patch 0.15 instead of a 0.3 or 0.35. So that's progress, actually huge progress, and I'm incredibly excited about what 9.2 and 9.3 could bring to the table. But if 9.2 or 9.3 introduce convoluted systems that get a lot of feedback on the PTR that is ultimately ignored, and then we get more systems that are built to annoy and frustrate the player base, only to get fixed later on down the line and then scrapped again in 10.0, I don't see anything changing long term. So to me, these changes are amazing, but if the mindset that led to these changes being introduced doesn't continue throughout the rest of the Shadowlands patches, and arguably more importantly into the next expansion, I fear that we're in for another roller coaster. Hopefully I'm wrong, because I would love to be wrong. Hopefully the dev team continues to listen and prioritizes player fun going forward, because there are only so many times you can break the glass in case of emergency, and I'm not sure if Blizzard has many of those little hammers left. But that's everything we know of patch 915 so far. Stay tuned for more videos next week when the PTR comes up and we can dive into all of it for real. What do you think of this long list of updates coming for patch 915? Which update do you think will be most impactful for you personally? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who's subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I'll see you next time.